Let me ask you something. When two giants meet, when two powerful forces sit across the table, what do you think happens? It's not just politics, it's not just a photo op. It's the battle of willpower, discipline, and strategy. That's exactly what happened when Ajit Doval met China's Foreign Minister Wang. And if you think this was just about promises on paper, you're wrong. This was about power, about vision, and about who refuses to bend in the arena of global power. One truth has never changed. Strength demands respect. No matter how sophisticated the words, no matter how polished the diplomacy, if you walk into a room projecting weakness, you have already lost. When Ajit Doval sat across from Wang, this was not a casual meeting between two officials. This was a test of posture, of tone, of raw willpower. China respects power, not sympathy. They calculate strength, not kindness. And when India entered that meeting, it did not come with a ball in its hand. It came with its back straight, shoulders firm, and eyes unshaken. That's the way life works as well. If you want respect in your career, in your family, in your goals, you cannot ask for it like a favor. You must build it brick by brick, through results, through action, through undeniable presence. Think about it. How many times in your own life have you seen people ignored because they appeared uncertain, hesitant, unsure of themselves? How many times has the loudest voice in the room been the one that carried authority, even when it wasn't the smartest? Respect doesn't automatically flow to the deserving. It flows to the strong. That is why India's approach in that meeting mattered so much. It wasn't about pleading for peace. It was about commanding it. It wasn't about requesting stability. It was about laying down the position that peace is not optional. It is necessary. And that difference, the difference between asking and demanding, is the line that separates those who are respected from those who are forgotten. Strength is not just military power or economic weight. It is the way you carry yourself, the way you refuse to compromise on your values, the way you project confidence even when the ground under you is shaking. The Doval represented that. He embodied a nation that is no longer content with being pushed around, a nation that has learned through decades of struggle that only strength earns a seat at the table. The same applies to you. If you walk into any negotiation, any challenge, or any battle without strength, the world will ignore you. But if you walk in with clarity, with preparation, with determination written on your face, then even your silence will command respect. Promises are easy to make. They roll off the tongue like a well-rehearsed script, polished and convincing. But in the world of power, promises are nothing without pressure. If you take someone's word at face value, you are setting yourself up for disappointment, because words without consequence dissolve into the air. That is exactly what Ajit Doval understood when he sat across from Wang. He knew that China has a long history of making statements that sound good on paper but mean little in practice. That's why India didn't just sit there waiting for reassurance. It applied pressure. It created an environment where promises had weight, where commitments couldn't be just symbolic gestures, but had to carry responsibility. In life you will encounter the same reality. People will promise to stand by you, to support you, to change their behavior, or to deliver on their commitments. But if you simply rely on their words without creating accountability, you will find yourself betrayed. Pressure is not aggression. It's the firm expectation that what is spoken must be matched by action. India demanded that peace on the border be more than just a nice phrase in a press release. They pushed for concrete steps, for timelines, for verification, because only under pressure does a promise transform into a plan. Think about how many broken promises have defined history, how many times trust was shattered because one side assumed good faith while the other played for time. That is why India's approach was not naive. It was clear-eyed and disciplined, and this lesson extends far beyond politics. In your career, if someone promises to deliver results, don't just wait, set clear milestones. In your personal goals, don't just promise yourself you will change. Apply pressure through routines, accountability, and discipline until that promise becomes reality. Words are cheap because they cost nothing to speak, but actions cost energy, sacrifice, and commitment. That is why actions are the only true currency of trust. India's demand for accountability in that meeting was not just about securing peace, it was about sending a message. Empty words will not satisfy, only results will. And that is how respect is earned, how promises are turned into reality, and how pressure transforms vague commitments into powerful outcomes. Vision is what separates a reaction from a strategy. Anybody can respond to a situation in the moment, but true leadership looks beyond the immediate tension and sees the bigger picture. When Ajit Doval met Wang, he was not there to chase short-term relief or superficial promises. His focus was on the long game, on creating a foundation where India's interests would be protected, not just for today but for decades to come. That kind of thinking is rare, because it requires patience, discipline, and the ability to resist the temptation of quick fixes. It is always easier to grab whatever is offered immediately. But real leaders ask a different question. Will this decision strengthen us tomorrow, or will it weaken us? In your own life, this is the same principle that applies when you choose between instant gratification and long-term fulfillment. Do you chase what feels good right now, or do you make the harder choice that will build your future? Doval's vision in that meeting was not simply about calming border tensions for the weak. It was about pushing for a sustainable balance of power, building trust that could last, and setting the stage for India to negotiate from a position of even greater strength in the years ahead. That is how vision translates into strategy. You align today's moves with tomorrow's destination. When you think only in the present, you act out of desperation. When you think in the future, you act with clarity. That is why the meeting was not just about words exchanged across the table, but about signaling intent. India will not settle for temporary peace if it risks permanent instability. That attitude is exactly what you must carry into your own challenges. If you are building a career, don't just look for the fastest promotion, build the skills and credibility that will make you unshakable 10 years from now. If you are working on your health, don't just look for a quick diet, create habits that will keep you strong for life. Vision forces you to think bigger than your current circumstances, to design strategies that carry you beyond immediate obstacles. That is what transforms leaders from participants into game changers, from survivors into architects of their destiny.
One individual, no matter how brilliant or determined, cannot carry the weight of an entire nation or movement alone. The power of unity is what multiplies influence, amplifies voices, and creates the momentum that forces others to pay attention. When Ajit Doval met Wang, he was not speaking as a lone negotiator, he was carrying the strength of more than 1 billion people behind him. Every word he spoke carried the echo of a united nation that refused to compromise its sovereignty. That unity gave substance to his presence, because when a country stands together, it cannot be easily ignored or pushed aside. Unity transforms negotiations into power, and power into results. The same principle applies in every area of life. If a team is divided, even the most talented individuals will fail to achieve their goals. If a family lacks unity, it crumbles under external pressure. But when people align under one vision, when they set aside personal ego and differences to move as one, the force they create is unstoppable. That is why unity is the ultimate weapon. It is not just about numbers, it is about collective willpower, about millions of people agreeing that their future cannot be compromised. China could not simply dismiss India's stance in that meeting, because Doval wasn't speaking for himself, he was speaking for the unified determination of a nation. Think of the times in history when disunity destroyed potential, when internal divisions gave enemies the chance to exploit weaknesses. Now think of the victories won when people refused to be divided, when solidarity became the armor that no weapon could penetrate. That is why in your own journey, whether in your career, your community or your relationships, unity matters more than raw strength. You can be intelligent, disciplined, and resourceful, but if the people around you are not aligned with your vision, progress will stall. When everyone moves together, progress accelerates. Unity is not about everyone being the same. It is about different strengths combining toward one purpose. Just as a nation needs soldiers, thinkers, workers, and leaders, your life requires different roles working together under one mission. When you create that alignment, you generate a force greater than anything you could achieve alone, and that force makes you unshakable in the face of challenges. There are moments when silence speaks louder than 1,000 speeches. In negotiations, in battles of will, and in the pursuit of respect, it is not always the noise that creates power, it is restraint. When Ajit Doval sat across from Wang, India did not need to shout, to argue endlessly, or to fill the room with words. Sometimes strength is proven not by what you say, but by what you refuse to say. Silence, when backed by unshakable resolve, can be more intimidating than threats. It signals that you will not be provoked, you will not be tricked, and you will not be rushed into decisions that compromise your values. That silence carried a message. India's position is firm, non-negotiable, and crystal clear, without the need for excessive explanation. This principle applies to life just as powerfully. Too many people believe they must constantly defend themselves, justify their actions, or seek validation through endless words. But true confidence doesn't need constant expression. When you know your worth, when your preparation is solid, when your results are undeniable, silence becomes your ally. The strongest people in the room are not the loudest, they are the ones whose quiet presence forces others to take them seriously. In the same way, India's calm firmness during that meeting showed a discipline that words could never capture. Think about moments when you faced conflict. Did shouting or arguing make you stronger, or did calm restraint give you more control? Silence creates space, and in that space others reveal themselves. They become uneasy, they over-explain, they try to fill the void you leave. That is the power of controlled silence. It turns the pressure back on those across from you. Doval understood that not every statement required a counter-statement. Sometimes the refusal to react becomes the most powerful reaction. Discipline and control are weapons, more effective than noise. Anyone can raise their voice, but it takes mastery to hold it back. Anyone can argue endlessly, but it takes wisdom to let silence carry the message. In negotiations, in leadership, and in personal battles, silence backed by strength creates an aura that cannot be ignored. It shows that you do not need validation, you do not need approval, and you will not bend simply to fill the air with words. So when Ajit Doval walked out of that meeting, it wasn't just about diplomacy, it was a reminder to every one of us: power is earned, not given. Respect is commanded, not requested. And victory, true victory, comes to those who prepare, who fight, and who never back down. The world respects strength, and it always will. Now ask yourself, are you walking into life's negotiations as a beggar or as a warrior?